Hey everyone, welcome to Always Good News. My name is Mark Miller. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good day. And we always love to hear where you're watching from. So as you're jumping on, just let us know in the comment box down below, maybe what city, what province, if you're here in Canada or maybe a different city around the world. Hey, let us know where you're watching from and let others know as well. If you want to share this, that'd be great. And we're going to have another great conversation tonight. And hey, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click on subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. Good to see people joining us, and we're just going to wait for a few seconds while people just jump on and let us know. Hey, where are you watching from, everybody? Let us know. So good to have you joining with us. We're going to have a great conversation in just a few minutes. Hey, by the way, during our conversation, if you do happen to have a question for our guest tonight, we try to get to some of those when we can. You'll see a question box down below. If you click on that, just write a question. We'll see that, and maybe we'll get time to talk about that. Welcome everybody from Montreal. Love the city of Montreal. Welcome. So good to have you. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm a big Montreal Canadiens fan, so I love your hockey team. Good to see you. Good to have everybody joining us. Well, in just a minute, I'm going to be joined by my guest, Matt Joy. Matt is someone that I got to say, I admire him. I respect him a lot. And we've done some ministry together over the years. And it's going to be an awesome conversation. After spending 15 years pastoring on the east coast of Canada, Matt and his family moved to Edmonton, Alberta in 2018, where he serves with the team at Life Church as an associate pastor there. And Matt also serves as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces as a Padre, or a chaplain, for the 41st Combat Engineer Regiment out of Edmonton and Calgary. Matt, I can tell you firsthand, he's passionate about people, loves seeing the good news of the gospel change lives and families and neighborhoods, and you're going to really enjoy hearing from Matt. So good to have Dave and Gary with us, and Hilda. Hey, we have a guest from Ecuador. I love the beautiful country of Ecuador. I've been there many times. It's a beautiful country. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have a great conversation. Going to go ahead and add our guests for tonight. Let us know where you're watching from. And if you've got a question, just shoot one in the box there. Hey, Matt Joy.
Hey, Mark Miller. So good to be here with you.
Man, it's good to see you. Welcome to Always Good News, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, actually. I think I have a lot more snow than you do, but I'm doing well regardless.
Absolutely, you do. We have no snow here on the East Coast, for the record. None.
Wow. I've seen pictures. My dad tends to flaunt the pictures back, send it out west to my brother and I to remind, try to lure it back.
Yeah. Well, Matt, it's good to have you. Listen, before we jump in, we do have a tradition here, a little this or that, but you know, I've been thinking about it. We're in December now with Christmas fast approaching, and so I think it would only be fitting to do a little Christmas themed this or that.
I like it.
You take it? All right. I don't know if everybody else is having a hard time hearing you. Maybe it's just my connection, but let me just put that up there. And you might have to speak a little louder than normal so we can hear you all the way through the snow.
Is this a little bit better?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Hey, let us know, everybody, if there's any issue hearing us tonight. Okay, here we go. A little bit of Christmas this or that. Eggnog or hot chocolate?
Hot chocolate.
Michael Bublé or Bing Crosby?
I got to go with the Bublé.
Good Canadian answer.
Yeah.
All right. Gift wrap or gift bag?
Oh, definitely the wrap. If I'm receiving it. Bag if I'm giving it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. You know what? I cannot wrap. I've started doing a few things this year. I'm no good.
Yeah, I try.
Confession. Real tree or artificial?
Artificial.
Okay.
Convenience.
Yeah, that's right. Pre-lit.
Yes, but after so many years, you have to do some of the manual labor of lighting it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that the truth? How about this one? Gingerbread or sugar cookie?
Ooh. Anything sweet, I'm not going to say no to, but I would prefer sugar cookie for sure.
All right, last one. Elf or Polar Express?
Elf. Yeah, for sure, Elf. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. Matt, good to have you, man. And listen, we just want to jump in. I'd love to hear your testimony, how you came to be a follower of Jesus. Now, I do want to say, we know each other for many years, and I was just saying in the intro, we've got some good memories together. I don't know if the Junior Chicken story should come out at some point tonight.
It probably will, I'm sure.
It probably will.
We'll make a way.
Yeah, I want to hear some of your testimony, but I also, you grew up as a PK, and for those who don't know what that means, it means you're a pastor's kid. So even maybe how that played into your faith formation, growing up, obviously in an environment of knowing the gospel, attending church, that kind of stuff. Your dad was a minister. So yeah, jump in, man. Tell us about your testimony.
Yeah. So again, grew up kind of living all over Newfoundland, rural, urban as I get a little bit older. But my dad was in full-time ministry my entire childhood and teenage years. And that in and of itself, wasn't a negative for me. Like, it wasn't anything that I resisted, ran from. And if anything, I got to watch my dad love on people of all walks of life and give the time of day to anybody who needed to talk or needed help in any way, needed guidance. So he modeled that incredibly well. And I think I picked up some of the passion that I have for people now and for showing up in some of these spaces by just what I observed in his life and ministry, and my mother as well. So yeah, it wasn't anything that I resisted. It was all positive, great home environment. Loved the church, loved being a part of a youth group, loved all of that stuff, but got to a place in my teen years, Mark, where I started to wrestle with, do I own this myself or not? Or am I walking this road because it's been shown to me, because I've been led down it? And, have I really wrestled this through myself? And all the while being wired certainly to want the attention of my peers and, I like to be liked. And in that zone, it can be a horrible mix as a teenager, as you're sifting through your own growth and journey, and started to make some decisions to garner some of that attention that wasn't good, wasn't healthy, and all the while I'm wrestling through my own faith. So there was probably a middle point there, late junior high, early senior high, where things got off the tracks a little bit for me. There was a little bit of legal stuff that came into play, and I was one of those kids that I swear I got caught doing everything that I attempted to do wrong.
I'd say the prayers of a mom right there.
You know what I'm saying? And now my 39-year-old self looks back and thanks God for that. And I pray those same prayers over my kids.
Well, you must have done something right, because you got some fans on here. Matt Joy is a legend. Jordan Harnum is just giving you some shouts out, and some other Matt Joy fans there. So yeah, carry on. So the prayers of a mom, you got into some trouble, but
yeah. So it was an incredible ride and a rough one at points there in my teen years. But I do want to bring it to this point where I think it was a 16, 17-year-old kid, classic regional youth rally, youth convention, conference kind of thing going on. Saturday night, that afternoon, I had gotten caught doing something that was against the rules of the conference, and they were debating whether or not to send me home. And thankfully, this youth pastor had compassion enough to let me sit through another service. And I kind of built up this hard shell, and in the middle of that night, and this call again to return, the call to repentance, a friend of mine, a year older than me, walked over, and his hand on my shoulder was like the hand of God reaching into that school gymnasium, honestly. And I melted like wax. And anyway, all that to say, that moment was a moment for me where I realized this has to be mine. Like, I choose, right? I choose to give my life to you, to follow you, and to whatever that looks like. So anyway, that was a really big turning point for me in high school. And yes, it's been a journey ever since, but that was the moment I look back on to say, I owned it,
Yeah. And I think, similar story for myself, growing up in an environment where the gospel was known to us, whether by our parents or whatnot, there does come a moment where you own it and you realize that I get to make a decision now. Is this mom and dad's passing down something to me, or am I going to wrestle with this, figure this out on my own? So good, Matt. So you grew up as a PK, and now you and your wife, Kayla, are raising two PKs of your own.
Come on.
Because, you followed your dad's example and actually went into pastoral ministry. Talk to us about that, man. How did that call to ministry come for you?
Yeah, so what I just unpacked about my middle teenage years, that was after I sensed as a junior high kid that God wanted this for my life, or wanted me to walk this road. It shifted and looked differently all along the way, and I welcome change and different roles in that. But I just knew that sense of call to pastor, to love people in this way. And again, no doubt influenced by what I had seen, but I just felt God tapping me as an individual. Some people ask, oh, what did your dad do? And as soon as they hear, they assume, oh, that's why you're in this role. And I'm like, no, I have 3 other siblings that aren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if anything, your dad being in that role is a good reason why you wouldn't be.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah. And so anyway, all that to say, I felt like it started in junior high. So all the way through school, anybody asked me what I wanted to do, outside of that little blip in the radar there for about a year, I would say this is what I wanted and what I felt I was going to do. I remember a peer in high school raised his hand in class one day and he said, "Sir, if clowns go to clown college to become clowns, if Matt goes to Bible college, is he trying to be a Bible?" just razzing me. So, I mean, I tell that story to say I wasn't shy about it. And I was confident in that this is what God wanted, you know?
Yeah. So good, Matt. And I've seen firsthand some of your ministry. Let's just talk about the 9 junior chickens at this point. And,
we got to get it out there.
Yeah, we got to get it in here just for the pleasure of everybody that's watching this. So, so Matt and I are doing a weekend conference in his home church there. I was speaking with him, and following one of the night services, we head for some good old-fashioned McDonald's. The only thing open that time. Like, tell the people what happened, Matt.
So a little prelim to that is that the whole conference was built around social justice and loving on people in practical ways. So Mark was bringing the word, and so I think there was an example shared of paying for the person behind you in the drive-through during the message. So as we're going through the drive-through that night after the service, I said, I guess we have to practice what we preach, right? So I say to the intercom in the drive-through, what is the person behind me ordered? Like, with full intentions of paying for it. And she says, 9 junior chickens. And Mark tells the story best because the look I gave him was like totally second guessing we were going to do this. I don't know if I want in on this anymore. Yeah, 9 junior chickens. I was trying to process the cost, I think, in my pastor salary head. Yeah.
Yeah, as you're handing your debit card, you're looking at me like I was not expecting 9 junior chickens. And in full confession, I have not, been a fan of junior chickens, so thankfully they aren't on the price scale of a Big Mac, because that would have been quite an investment.
Exactly.
But I do remember in that moment as we pulled away, it was a car full of young adults, and they were all hanging out the window. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that was a funny moment that'll live on for a long time. But hey, Matt, you're currently serving as an associate pastor in Edmonton at Life Church. This has been an incredibly challenging year overall, but for churches, how have you been seeing God at work? What's God doing in Edmonton and through Life Church?
Yeah, so again, some really neat one-on-one stories that are happening through the lives of those who call Life Church home, who are part of our church family. One in particular that I would share, just as an example of how God is at work in the midst of this. There was one of our parishioners who took a job at a nonprofit here in the city, and just the nature of some of the work, some of the values behind the organization, she struggled with being present there. Wondered if it was a rub to her faith, and if there was a compromising in her values with some of the things that they stood for. And she came and met with one of the pastors, and the advice given was just like, hey, like, live this out, walk, be a light. Don't run from this. Let's believe that God has placed you there. What if you are the difference maker in this situation or on this team? Maybe this is their only chance, right? So with that counsel, she kind of dove back into her work and said, okay, Lord, I will be the light you've called me to be. I'll love on these people. I'll be true to you in this. And anyway, that witness was brought to bear month after month, year after year. And her supervisor just was blown away at the peace of God in her life. And in particular, through this pandemic, how unrattled she was because of her faith. So her last evaluation, one-on-one evaluation, was happening. And the Life Church family member was telling me, the entire evaluation was just questions about my faith and the why I'm at peace, why I can be so joyful in the midst of all
Wow.
that's going on. Yeah. So that in itself is remarkable. It got to a place where the hunger was so obvious. She said to her supervisor, "Would you like to talk to one of our pastors?" So she sends her my contact information. We get in touch. We end up on a Zoom call, and this lady gives her heart to Jesus. After unpacking her own story and longing for peace, I had the opportunity to introduce her to Jesus. And so
Wow.
really powerful example, I guess, of what it looks like to show up and to keep showing up, right?
Yeah.
And to be light in darkness. So that was one really cool thing. And then as a family, a couple of initiatives that we've taken in the midst of right now. Edmonton has a significant homeless population. Those are struggling with chronic housing issues, and our mayor and council have been all over it, setting up makeshift shelters to make sure everybody's in and out of the cold, especially during this season. So they're leading in a really cool way with all of this. But one of the organizations that are on the front lines is called Mustard Seed here in Edmonton.
Right.
Yeah, they knocked on our door. They're in Red Deer and Calgary as well. And they knocked on our door with a campaign called Mugs of Joy, which I love for lots of reasons. But inside this mug that you would purchase, you go almost like Operation Christmas Child, the shoebox style of packaging. You go out as a family, you buy your mug, put bus tickets in it, coffee cards in it, warm socks in it, hand warmers in it, and a note of encouragement to speak life into those who would receive it. So anyway, we threw that call out a couple of weeks ago. We've got 62 mugs come in so far. We've got until Christmas Sunday. So that's another really neat thing. Coming into the fall, there was lots of banter about whether or not schools would have enough PPE. So we found a local school from a population that would be a little bit more struggling financially. And we went to work and did a mass drive, and we delivered, I think it was 800 masks to them in September. And that initiated a really cool connect first time that a couple months later, she writes me and says, "Hey, we are looking for something to do to bless seniors who may be lonely this Christmas. If we created Christmas cards, our kids at our school, would you get them to seniors? Would you have any seniors in your congregation that could use them?" And we were like, yes. So no joke, as I came in here to do this tonight, on my desk, there's a big envelope from the school packed with cards from these kids to bless our seniors that were connected to a ministry. So just a couple of really neat highlights that's happening.
Oh man, I love it. I love a couple things you said there. Showing up and keep showing up. I mean, that, is a short sentence, but a powerful one. And I love the idea. And hey, if you're watching, I mean, you don't even need to have this as a group activity. Buy a coffee travel mug, stuff it with some good stuff, and have it in your car, ready to give out. Meet some of those practical needs. I love it, Matt. And that, man, that doesn't surprise me one bit. You're involved with that kind of stuff, as I know you and your love for people. And listen, you also serve, and I said this in the intro before you jumped on with us, as a chaplain, or more officially a padre, with the Canadian Armed Forces, which is, man, so awesome. Can you tell us where that desire came to serve your country in this way? Because it's not every day that a pastor, goes one step further in terms of impact in a different kind of environment. So where did that desire to come from to serve your country? How'd that all play out?
Yeah, so I think as far back as I can remember, even in my teenage years, I had a love for the country, and just so proud to be Canadian, and that just came very natural. And all that to say, shift ahead in my undergrad, I was going to school in Ontario when 9/11 happened.
Wow.
And we were on campus in our dorms with all this uncertainty about whether or not an attack was coming on Toronto next. And there was lots of banter in the media and genuine fear and concern. And anyway, in the midst of all that, there was this natural sense of patriotism that kind of came to the surface. Like, we didn't know in those moments if there was going to be an opportunity to respond, to go. We had no idea what the result would be or the response would be from our country. And it just it kind of prodded that which was in me already in terms of love for country and wanting to serve in that capacity. And it just kind of grew and grew to the point where my then very serious girlfriend and I I would bring it up so often. We had a talk, and she said, "Hey, it's not that this is a deal breaker, but it's a completely different path than the one you're on. So if you are planning to join the Army, I need to know now, and then we can decide whether or not this can work, and we can move forward." So I really wrestled in that with God and with those, with her in particular, and got to a place where I said, you know what? I'll always have a passion for those who serve in that capacity. I'll always, as a pastor, look to build bridges and to honor and pray for and love on the members of our Canadian Armed Forces. But I really feel this pastoral call is where I need to walk and what I need to walk out, and just kind of set that aside, and just, you know, as a passion, or maybe a young adult zeal or whatever, and just said, I moved on. 10 years into ministry, full-time ministry, I'm now lead pastor of a growing church, and faced with all kinds of theological conversations, cultural realities, and feeling this need to go back to start my master's, to keep learning. And so in that, my first semester back doing my master's, there was a major from the Army that came in. He was a chaplain, and he was doing a recruitment pitch for us as pastors to become chaplains in the reserve force. So I could pastor and be a padre at the same time. Wow. Blew my mind. I had no idea that this was an option or a possibility. And I had a good friend at that point who had become a reg force, a full-time member, chaplain. So I thought it was either that or nothing. So anyway, all that to say, I met with him. I booked a meeting that week, went to the base there in St. John's, and just said, hey, I feel like I would be a great candidate. I would love to serve my country in this way. Sign me up. And he looked at me and said, I think you'd be a great candidate too, but you have to finish your master's. It's a prerequisite to serve in this way. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, you got to be kidding me. So all that to say, it meant a big grind. Again, that was my first semester in 2014 while I was full-time as a lead pastor. So I plugged away at my master's, and every course felt like a step closer to this goal of applying. And that was just applying. There was no guarantee at that point. So anyway, that's where that started. 2014, I went to see him. He told me that it wasn't until Christmas 2017 that I knew I was academically very close to finishing my degree, my master's degree. And I went to the registrar of my school and I said, hey, give me an update. And he said, well, when you finish the courses you've signed up for in this winter, you're going to graduate in May of 2018. So at this point, we're already going through a transition as a family, feeling like we were going to be launching out somewhere, some way. So I went back and booked another meeting with that same major, who is now a light colonel, back in the same office almost 4 years later, and just said, hey, I'm back.
Yeah, you can't get rid of me.
So he started the process so fast. I had my medical, my aptitude test, my force test, which is the physical, all on one night, the interview, everything all kind of packed in, and we motored through that part. Then once your screening goes to a national committee for review, that takes a little while. All the while, we were deciding where we were going to be moving and what God was saying to us as a family. We ended up in Edmonton, July 18. And September 18, everything got finalized, and they had a unit with my name on it here in Edmonton. I enrolled officially fall 18 and started serving. And no joke, Miller, my Army office ended up being 5 minutes from my church office, and they didn't know about each other.
Wow.
Yeah, just beautiful how the hand of God was in all of that, and the timing even of my kids' independence and maturity for me to be able to go away to training when I had to go and things. It's just been remarkable. Wow.
So good, Matt. Thanks for doing, walking us through that, because it's not always, just so cut and dry like we think. So I want to jump into this because I think this is important. So you go, thinking about this today, you go from growing up, in a Christian home, your dad's a pastor. So you're steeped in this thing, probably, as they say, teething on the pews. To entering full-time pastoral ministry. So you're still in that kind of, bubble is kind of the word of this year. But now you're serving in the military. So, a completely different world environment than you're used to. many different, people, backgrounds, faith backgrounds, no faith backgrounds. How does a guy, grow up in a Christian home, pastor's kid, go to Bible college, become a pastor, and all of a sudden he's in a totally different. And the reason I'm kind of laying this out, because I too serve as a police chaplain for our National Police Force, and it's a different world in terms of what these men and women face, and kind of how they're wired and their background and things that they've experienced in life. So here's the question. How do you live out and share your faith in an environment like that?
Okay. So right off the hop, I would say through the leadership of mentors, not the least of which what I've seen in my dad, but I did my internship pastorally at Cornerstone Ministry Center in downtown St. John's.
Right.
And so I felt like, and I initiated that, I ran after that. I felt like all along the way, even when I pastored in rural Newfoundland or in St. John's, I purposely burst that bubble anytime it started to form and put myself in uncomfortable situations. I remember one time my intern and I volunteered to serve with the AIDS Committee of Newfoundland and Labrador, and we ended up in some interesting conversations and spaces. And I remember taking a team of students down there to learn, to be pushed, to be stretched, to see parts of the city. So I felt like that was already a part of my journey. So whether it was a drug addict in my city, or the homeless or the hungry, people who don't believe like me, I just always tried to find ways to be in those spaces. So I say that because whoever's listening, at whatever point you're listening, you can find that, right? There's ways you can show up and volunteer outside of your comfort zone, outside of what you would normally naturally gravitate to.
But it's got to be intentional. Like you got to
has to be intentional. So by the time I got to the military, that was already a big part of who I was and where I found myself anyway. So I found comfort in it. In some ways, it's more comfortable than some of the traditionally steeped conversations and places and modes I find myself in. And I do believe that God's burdened me that way and wired me that way. But we have this kind of mandate as chaplains in the Canadian Armed Forces that's three-pronged. Number one, there's people in my Army unit who believe like I believe, right? There are not a lot, but there's a number who are Christians that I can read scripture with, I can pray with, I can talk openly about their faith, my faith. And then there's others who are of deep faith that's different than mine. Maybe a Sikh, maybe it's an Indigenous person who would walk with an elder, or again, Muslims. Just this summer had organized or helped point people to a Muslim imam and an Indigenous elder to get support. So there's a referral that happens as well in my role. But then there's a third element that encompasses the whosoever, and that's care for all. So I have the opportunity to show up, and like you said, just keep showing up. And the thing is, even when it's unspoken, wherever I am, he is, right? Wherever I am, the love of God and the difference and the grace that I've received from Christ is flowing through my words, my actions, my presence. So that ministry of presence is chaplaincy in the Canadian Armed Forces. And sometimes you can get lost on what you can say, what you can't say, and all that. Man, just go be who you are. And no one is asking me to be who I'm not, right? I am free to be the follower of Jesus that I am, and to love on people in that way and through that. So,
man, I love that, Matt. The ministry of presence. The Bible talks about being the fragrance of Christ.
Come on.
Right. So you just bring that. I love it. And I too, I agree. You got to put yourself out there. But I think sometimes in our safe, even insulated Christian environments, we forget how powerful, Christ in us is. Yes. And we don't have to force it. We don't have to manufacture anything. Like you said, we just got to be there, and we take Christ with us into those situations. Man, that's so awesome. Now, here's the deal, though. Your journey, that dream you had to serve your country, didn't fall perfectly into place, or at least by your timeline. But you had to be obedient to God's call. Take some risks as well. Any just a different angle on this. Any words of encouragement to anybody watching tonight that maybe feels like they've got some dreams. They feel like God's calling them to some things, but it's a dream that maybe feels deferred or even dead. Any words of encouragement for somebody in that place?
Yeah, listen, one of the things that I've learned over and over, especially this year, has been amplified, but to run towards hard things. In life, there are hard things that are inevitable, right? There are things that'll come our way that we can't stop from coming, that will bring about growth in us that wouldn't happen otherwise without that adversity. But let's not just wait for the inevitable hard things, but let's choose hard things. Let's run towards those dreams, because a lot of times you'll feel God plant something in your heart and you'll get passionate about it, and then you realize, oh, that's going to take that sacrifice, that discipline. It's going to take this amount of time, and you may just find yourself drifting away from it because it seems hard. And maybe if it's hard, it's not right. No. Don't buy into that lie, because some of the best and most full life is on the other side of hard things and hard journeys. And sometimes we choose that, right? And I would encourage anybody listening, if you've got that dream within you and you're not even sure of the next steps, it feels so far, choose to embrace the adversity, because in that, I think there's potential in your life that will never get realized without the adversity. And that on the other side of your obedience, there are people waiting and lives being transformed, and people who need to hear, and people who just need your presence if we're willing to do that. The other part of that is, it takes time. It just takes time. I think out of the place of connectedness, Mark, is the other bit, right? If we fill our lives with distraction, and we don't even have to intentionally choose that this day and age. I mean, it's all around us. Shout out actually to John Mark Comer. I'm reading The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry right now, and it's just rocking me. Distraction will kill dreams. And if we aren't purposefully connecting to the vine, if we're not taking that time to lean in and pursue God and choose that life in that way, we'll miss it. But yeah, if it feels deferred, maybe even dead, again, look who we serve, right? He'll resurrect it, right? And give you everything you need to take the next step. And I love that picture in Scripture, in the Psalms, where it refers to God's word as a light to our steps. Sometimes it's just enough for the next one. We don't have the full set of steps, because maybe if we had the full step, we wouldn't feel courageous enough to go for it. But if we just ask him for the Holy Spirit's empowerment to take that next one, and then the next one, and the next one, it keeps us trusting, keeps us moving towards the dreams, again, that he has put in us. So, yeah.
That's so good, Matt. And I love the Scripture. What's even better than the sacrifice is the obedience. The sacrifice is real, it's hard, but to obey is even better than that sacrifice. Well, this has been really, really good, man, really rich. And I just want to honor you and just say, knowing there are people like you serving the members of our military is so encouraging to me. Hearing the stories of what God's doing through Life Church and through your role there and your family's obedience is the good news that we want to get out there, because the narrative right now is overly negative and just discouraging. And to hear these stories is that's what this is all about. So listen, everybody that's watching, I hope you've been encouraged by Matt's story, especially if you have, like Matt said, those dreams that haven't been realized. I want to remind you tonight of two scriptures. Scripture tells us that we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called. And the Bible also tells us in Proverbs 3 to trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. Submit to him in all your ways, and he'll make those paths straight. And lastly tonight, I just, Matt talked about showing up and keep showing up. There's people watching. You're in a whole bunch of different environments, maybe at school, work, university, and your friend groups. I want to challenge you to keep showing up, because when you show up, when you walk into that room, you bring the gospel with you, and to share it. People need your light to shine bright. And I'm so encouraged by what I've heard from you, Matt. Shining your light in all kinds of different environments, but being intentional, even when it's hard, so encouraging. Listen, if you're watching and you're interested in some help in how to share your faith, I want to encourage you to visit billygraham.ca/share. Some great resources there that will equip you to share your faith. Matt, how can people connect with you, with Life Church online?
Yeah. Yeah, connect with me here on Instagram. Matt, MattWcjoy is my handle here. Same thing with Facebook. www.welcometolife.church. You'll find our church there. And again, if perchance someone comes across this video and you've got a heart to serve in the chaplaincy, and especially if you're here in Alberta, but even right across this country, and you're working on your master's and you're ordained, there is opportunities. They are in need of reservist padres right across coast to coast. So again, maybe someone's heart's being stirred on that front. It would be great for you to follow that up too. Yeah.
That's so good. Matt Joy, thanks for your service to our country. Thanks for your friendship, bro. And thanks for making a difference in every space that God's called you to. It's been an honor to have you on Always Good News.
Yeah, and an honor to be here. Love what you are doing. Everybody that I know that serves with the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association is good people. And I love you, man. Love you guys, and love what you're doing.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you. Thanks, everybody, for watching this episode. We'll see you next time on Always Good News. Take care.
Jeez.